I'm Jasmine from Hidden Pockets. This question about people using public Wi-Fi, and I remember reading a report about how Indians are the highest number when it comes to usage of public Wi-Fi, and it was actually mocking the users. And I remember being one of them, and I was thinking in my head, why do I do this as a user habit when I'm clearly aware about the privacy concept? And then I went back to saying that affordability, but I also went back to this whole idea of right to privacy not coming as a design. It's not my it should not be on my it should not be an onus on me that I should be aware of VPN. It should be coming as part of the design. And this whole idea of right to privacy as a right that suddenly state had to come and recognize after 40 years, it's a little difficult for as a young person, because I think so with the relationship with the state, I don't have to keep going back to make state come up with new rights. That's not should, because even when with right to privacy came in, how do we practice is the question that as a young person or as a person in this country I'm really struggling with. How do I practice right? Do I have to keep going back to my state to tell me, okay, now tell me how do I execute this right? So like right now privacy seems like the only concept, it makes sense in digital citizenship in my head, because that's the only place where I can create my own idea of citizenship. I know I'm aware I'm mixing up the two sessions here, the two speakers here, but how do I even have a language? Because it's very new. Culturally speaking, I can't go back to my family and say I have a right to privacy. Just does not work. Whereas I feel it that I can make Facebook more accountable. So, it's getting, I think it's very diluted. At the same time, very confusing. So how do we take it forward?
So can I just say any of the panelists can also pitch in, right? If you would like to comment on any of the questions. Yeah.
So I'll just make a very quick comment on your comment about security and by design and privacy by design. So that's something we are pushing very hard at the Internet Society now, and you'll see 2018 when we move into our programs for next year. Security by design and privacy by design is something we'll say not just to the technical community, which we're very close to, but it's also got to be the vendors, the service providers, the retailers. I mean, everyone really needs to understand that concept and realize that, things are not the same anymore. Data is the new oil, of course. And in fact, there are already oil wars happening, except we don't know about it, right? Because our data has been compromised, it's been sold, it's been siphoned off, and in most times we don't even know about it. So, it has to be core to how we function digitally. It can't be a bolt-on. So, thanks.
I think that you make a really valuable point that I've only heard being made this year. Because a lot of these things, they're a question of narrative, right? And so it's an easy thing, and I don't think it's deliberately done, to say that users are important for their own privacy. Someone said in a closed-door meeting very powerfully that, that's like saying women are responsible for their own safety when public spaces are not quite in order. And so I think that it's a valuable point that you make, and it's important that all of us start mobilizing around that point, but also that we come up with concrete asks. That would be helpful from a cybersecurity point of view. I'm going to carry on about this theme a little later when I give my talk. But what you're describing is basically architecture, right? That we need to architect for this, right? And from that point of view, it's important to have language around which we can do it. So until you know that you have a right to privacy and that it is other people's responsibility to enable it, you don't know what you can ask for.
This anxiety about not knowing how to exercise your right to privacy, I think you can forget about the anxiety. We have freedom. How do we exercise freedom? We have liberty. How do we exercise liberty? When you lose it, you know you've lost it. And I really think it's important for us to keep exercising liberty if we want to retain it. It'll start vanishing if we stop exercising liberty. So, and privacy is part of that. So you may not want to exercise it with your parents, you may want to exercise it somewhere else. I want to exercise it with everyone, and I like to tell lies when I'm on the railway, on the train, because I like to reinvent myself there, and I don't want to speak. That's another form of exercising privacy. So I don't think you should worry about the concept, but if you find yourself feeling stifled because there is something being taken away, then you'll know what that right is.
Okay, there was another hand up, yes. And you'll introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, I'm Nicolas from Altermundi. It's very interesting. I mean, it's very interesting that you two went together, and I like very much how one topic flows into the other. In the case of VPNs that you said, I think, and actually we are getting, it's very interesting that this as a technical or has a lot of technical aspects, but we are talking about much more deep things. And in this case, VPNs and the reason why we start using VPNs is about trust. But actually VPNs are also a trust issue because you are changing one hand to the other and it's not a solution. So it's because the underlying layer is the one that is faulty, that is, we don't trust each other, and we haven't created networks of trust that allow us to relate with each other in a safe way. We don't have a safe contention space in the internet that allows us to relate with each other freely. And I think we need to start thinking about how to create these spaces where we can trust each other. It's about that more than creating infrastructure, because we already know about how architectural changes, so, and I really agree with you in the sense of we need to think about these things, but these things take a lot of time. IPv6 has been here for quite some time, and we haven't seen I don't know if you open your cell phone, but for sure you don't have IPv6, and we are talking about mobile network that is much easier, easy to deploy, I would say, in comparison to a lot of devices around. So IPv6 will take a lot of time. If we think about as a trusted network in the architectural level, it will not happen in the foreseen future. So I think we need to discuss a lot more about trust and about how we can create networks of trust between us. And there are a lot of ideas, and if anyone is interested, we can talk about that. But I would very much like to know what, Raj, do you think, or you guys think about trust in the digital space?
So that's rather problematic, this whole concept of trust in the digital space. Because you're right, there's multiple layers of that trust. And I think sometimes we are too cosmetic in our approach. You know, the Wi-Fi is encrypted, or I've got a VPN. By the way, so let me just make a point here about VPNs. In case I've motivated you to go and invest in a VPN, be very careful in whose service you use, because some of those buggers, what they do, they monitor you, they will keep a log of what you're doing, right? So just be careful. I mean, look very carefully at the products you subscribe to, because not all of them are equal. Yeah. So back to your point about trust, and from our perspective, or from my perspective, I actually think the future of the internet is potentially under threat. We said that the internet has really connected us, done lots of great things, but the level of trust that we see is diminishing. From data breaches, from privacy concerns, from not trusting your own government in some instances with your own data, your government surveilling you on behalf of another government. I mean, there's all sorts of combinations happening now. So, and we see, for example, the financial markets are so heavily dependent on the internet now. It's a large part of the global economy, not because people are using internet services, but because it actually drives the global economy. It's how we transfer information, how we track things, how we send things. So it's fundamental now. And basically, trust is fundamental to the internet's future. And I really, really think that it is under threat, and we need to do a whole lot more. And there's many dimensions of those threats, from the rights perspective, from the security or technical perspective, and just from the simple user perspective, who may have no idea absolutely whatsoever of what trust is and what is trusted and what is not trusted. You see, that's the other problem, right? No one's actually told us what is a trusted medium on the internet. We assume, let's say, your favorite search engine is trusted, but is it?
I think you wanted to.
I just kind of, can you hear me?
But
Yeah. I just wanted to add to what you were saying, no? And perhaps looking more from civil society practice, there were 2 points I wanted to make about this, and specifically about the digital security work we do, as well as digital security trainings work that happen. I actually think we really need to take a step back and relook at this, because I kind of feel like this digital security discourse that we are having is actually doing a bit more harm than good, because it gives us the sense of security, the sense that now I'm secure, but that's actually not true, because irrespective of how much resource we have, the state infinitely has much more. So I think even civil society has to take a relook at how we are looking at our digital security trainings, and what we are prescribing to civil society human rights defenders especially. And that comes back to that point, you know, because I personally, when I went through the digital security trainings, I was wholly uncomfortable, because it's not my responsibility to shut my laptop down like that. It's your responsibility to not take a look at it and not use it. So I think it's also problematic that we are also kind of preaching this shifting of onus back to the individual, which only gives a free hand, I think, to the state. That's my personal opinion on that. And that again relates to then what do we do, no, to build this network of trust. Now, my question, and perhaps Chinmay can chip in on the legal aspect of it. I think a lot of our focus now needs to really move to how we obtain evidence, how the state obtains evidence, and our focus should really be on dismissing improperly obtained or illegally obtained evidence, which is what happens in a lot of these cases, no? Especially criminal cases where the state just and the police just obtain what evidence they have to, in whatever way they have to, and we also are happy about it because it helps us incriminate the individuals we want to incriminate. We are also not greatly worried about how we got that information. Now, if we take, for example, the case of Vijay Mallya, the way a lot of the information that was obtained in that case is related to improperly scanned communications. So then I really think that we also have to take a relook at how civil society is approaching this whole issue.
Okay, there was one more hand up, and two more hands up actually. 3 more hands up. 4. Okay. Very, very quickly, and I just want to add in that I think both what you said actually added in one more layer of the trust game, which is trust between users. Because ultimately, and we see that in the context of, you know, gendered online violence, trust between users is dramatically dropping. Again, yeah.
Hi, I'm Brinda from Hidden Pockets. My question is actually connected to pretty much what all of you all have said so far. It pertains to access rights and privacy. Let's take, there is a person in some remote part of Madhya Pradesh near Bareilly in some village, and he's HIV positive. And there's an outreach worker who is going to meet that person and actually discloses their status by, or when they go to the testing center, you know, without actually, because today he just woke up on the wrong side of the bed, just decided to out that person's HIV status. We're talking about 2-3 things here. First is, now with the privacy judgment coming out, does this guy even know? I know you mentioned, you know, only when you lose it, you know that you had it, but I don't know if that guy sitting in that village there even knows that he has a right to privacy to begin with. All he can think about, imagine, is that people probably won't give him work or whatever that is. So does he have an idea related to right to privacy even to begin with? And then they're looking at, you know, giving out, introducing Aadhaar there as well to be able to access whatever service you have. And there is potentially so far testing center and the place, ART center, where the you know, treatment is being given. So far they didn't have a link. So they wouldn't know the source of infection, whether you're a sex worker, whether you're a trans person, or, you know, men who have sex with men. But now you can actually access that data also. So does this person, like, how does this person negotiate it? And are people, what is being done, or how do people even communicate that, anyone communicate that he has a right to privacy, or these are the things involved even?
There's so many questions, maybe we can just take the remaining 3 and then go back to the panel, yeah? Okay, so one there, yeah. And can you raise your hands, the other 2 people? 1, yeah. And you.
Hello. My name is Ram. I am from FSMK, Karnataka. So I don't have a question per se. I have a comment on the question that Jasmine asked. I'm like nowhere qualified to people sitting there. I'm just a dumb software engineer. So, and I think the question that she asked is very interesting because as a common people, as like very common people, there is very little that people can do in terms of securing themselves, right? So I see that as a threefold answer. One, in terms of, so I as a developer who has worked in a bunch of companies, so there's this aspect of saying, how secure do I keep my data? How do I build my system? How do I write my software? I think that is not something that the people can participate in. That is something that people who write code itself have to participate in. That is where software developers play a very crucial role, especially in terms of security or reserving privacy. In the digital world alone, I'm talking about. The second thing is a reference of especially how the current government is operating. The current government's operation is more like secrecy first and security last. That's again is something that reflects across companies everywhere. So even most of the companies that we work for, what they say is, inside the company, data breaches. So it's like secrecy first. Let's first protect it. We decide who is inside our boundaries. Within us, it's all fine. But outside this boundary, it's not okay. So it's secrecy first and security last. So the third thing is something that you actually, as common people, can do is the very simplest thing is to enable basic encryption on your phone. That's like the de facto thing that you can do. The second thing is to stick to HTTPS sites over HTTP sites. So they're like very basic, very, very basic things that exist that you should probably start adopting to. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Naman. I'm a student of economics. I want to make a comment to the panelists, and there's a question within that comment, with great power comes great responsibility. So, but in the present scenario in India, we see that accountability has taken a back seat. So, the comment which I would like to make is, aren't the government accountable to us for whatever things they are doing? We had a demonetization scandal recently. Now, it looks as if the Aadhaar, the UIDAI is going to be another scandal. So, when certain policies are made, shouldn't the government have some accountability towards it? Shouldn't we also have a right to accountability now? Do we need that as well? Thank you.
I'm going to begin because I see Usha taking notes, so I have a feeling that she's. No, you. Oh, there is.
Hi, my name is Anurag and I'm a fifth year law student. My question is to all the speakers here. Since we've been discussing about the design, the architecture, cybersecurity threats, and so forth, who designs this structure or designs this who's the architect? Is it the state, being all the stakeholders, or is it the person who's in position of power? Because if it's the state, does the state, the people have the access, the knowledge, the education? So the awareness is lacking in the first place. Then only they will be aware about their rights, and then only they can ask questions. So to that question, my solution is that we can have the state only being the solution, where they are educated, where they have access, they're told about their rights, they ask the questions, and then we design accordingly. Because if they are not aware, the technology, the people who are in power position will take over.
Okay, so let's get responses on any of these. And again, anyone can. Yeah.
Maybe if I can talk briefly about the issue of privacy by design. I think that's also another time bomb as well. Why? Because if you look at the digital space, all the technologies that we have at the moment is a result of innovation. And normally, innovation is a result of unknown ideas. So innovation comes first, naturally, before legislation and policy design, etc. So there is a challenge here. What should come first? And then another danger is who should, as you have raised it very well, who should design, who should come up with the design aspects. That is another area where a huge debate might emerge on who should be there. I mean, is it the state? Is it a multi-stakeholder approach? And if it is a multi-stakeholder approach, who is that stakeholder? So it can lead to a very huge debate. Let me give you a few examples. For instance, look at the international arena today. We still have even problems in defining some of the very key definitions. We still have problems, and we don't have solutions to that. And yet, we have to remember as well the danger. Another danger might be that if you give someone the power to make protocols and laws about the design, you're actually giving them the rights to make a decision on how innovation should be. And that's another danger as well. So I think this is something which we may not have very quick answers here today, but it's something that we need to continue debating and ensuring that everybody participates in the design. How? I don't have the answers.
Okay, if there are no more comments from the thing, Chinmay, would you like to say something? And you are also the next speaker. Usha also wants to pitch in. Yeah.
Because I think everything doesn't need to be answered, but one answer to your question, which also links up with, I think, what you were saying, that who understands privacy, if they don't even know what it is, what do you do? See, these are matters of civil education in a sense. And if I'll just give you one illustration to show how absurd it can be. We recently had a decision of a woman who was subjected to rape multiple times, got pregnant, found out late, abortion, being asked for, all of that, went through the High Court and then went to the Supreme Court. And everyone kept referring to, all the judges, and judges should certainly know the law, you would think. And they have the name, they have the HIV status, they have all of it completely there. So in the Supreme Court, after the first round of orders had been passed, the lawyer had to go back to the court and say, will you please make this X versus Y, Z or whatever, and take out this HIV status from there, but it's already out there. So it is true that the level of ignorance and lack of understanding of what rights mean, and that such rights even exist. In this case, it's completely absurd because the Indian Penal Code says you should not. It's an offense for you to reveal the name of a person who's been raped, who's a victim of rape. So we have a long way to go. That doesn't take away the primary right. So that's one thing. And it's a lot of hard work we therefore have to do to explain to people what that. I've had people, for instance, at meetings tell me, okay, madam, what you're saying is all right, but what will I do with freedom? And I'm like, no, you don't do anything with it. But but if you are going to say no to freedom, my freedom is lost, and I have a lot I want to do with my freedom. So, and on accountability, I just want to say this. This business of do we have to have a right to accountability? The whole idea of citizenship, and I don't mean digital now. The idea of citizenship is that we work at holding our state accountable. So we don't wait for the state to do something for us to find accountability there. We make them accountable. It's a lot of hard work, but I promise you it's worthwhile. And you don't have a choice.
We should talk about the responsibilities also, along with the rights.
Another session, yeah. Flag it.
Sorry, I'm sorry, there are certain rights where almost every right, the responsibility for my right existing is not on me. The responsibility is on somebody else. And when you have a right, I have a responsibility to make sure that your right is not infringed. When we work for accountability, we are working responsibly for everybody's rights. So I think we shouldn't, this business of if you have rights, why don't you talk about duties? I think we need to think a little deeper about it before we ask the question. The answers are quite clear.